The night was cold and silent, and the stars above were brighter than John had ever seen before. He walked slowly across the strange land, his boots sinking into the soft ground that seemed to breathe under his feet. The planet was empty, or at least it felt that way. No sound of birds, no wind, no voices, only his own breathing in the helmet of his suit. John had been alone for many days, his ship broken, his supplies running out. The last thing left in his bag was one small chocolate bar wrapped in silver paper. He saved it, not for hunger, but for hope, a reminder of Earth. His stomach growled, but he told himself to wait. Maybe tomorrow he would find something to eat. Maybe tomorrow he would find another ship. But deep in his heart, he knew he was close to the end. Each step was harder, each breath heavier. Still, John walked, because stopping was the same as dying. Then he saw her at first. He thought it was only a shadow moving between the broken stones. The ruins of an old alien city stood around him, walls broken and towers fallen. And in the middle of it, under the pale light of 2 moons, sat a figure, small, thin, and trembling. John froze, his hand on the small laser pistol at his side, but the figure did not move to attack. Instead, it looked at him with wide, glowing eyes filled with something he did not expect, fear. He stepped closer, slow and careful. Now he could see her clearly. She was not human, her skin pale blue with faint silver lines across it. Her clothes were torn, dirty, and too big for her small body. She looked weak, almost broken. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence pressed around them, heavy and strange. Finally, John lowered his weapon. "Are you alone?" he asked. Though he knew she would not understand, to his surprise, she nodded slowly. Her lips moved, and a soft voice came. "Yes," she said in broken human words. "Alone." The sound shocked him. How could she know his language? But before he could ask, her stomach growled loudly. She wrapped her arms around herself and looked away, ashamed. John felt something in his chest. Something human, pity. He opened his bag and looked inside. There it was, the last piece of Earth he carried with him. The chocolate bar. For a moment he hesitated. If he gave it to her, he would have nothing left. But then he saw the way she shivered, the way her eyes begged without words, and he made his choice. John knelt down and held it out. "Here," he said softly. The alien girl stared at it as if it was treasure. Her hand shook as she reached forward. Taking it gently, she smelled it first, confused, then took a small bite. Her eyes widened, glowing brighter for a second. She chewed slowly, as if tasting something impossible. Tears rolled down her cheeks, silent and strange. She whispered one word. "Sweet." John smiled a little, tired but satisfied. He had given away his last food. But for some reason, he felt lighter. The girl finished the bar slowly, holding the silver wrapper as if it was gold. She looked at him again, and for the first time, she smiled. It was a small smile, but in the empty, dead world, it felt like a sunrise. But then something strange happened. Her eyes glowed again, brighter this time. She closed them and whispered words in her own language, words John could not understand. The ground shook a little. Just for a second, John stepped back, fear rising in his chest. What was she? Why did she react like that to a simple chocolate bar? The girl opened her eyes again, and they were no longer weak. They looked deeper, stronger, almost powerful. John felt a chill. He had given away his last food, but maybe he had given something more, something he could not take back. She stood, slowly, still small but no longer trembling. The ruins around them seemed to echo her presence. She looked at John with a strange expression, a mix of gratitude and mystery. "You, human," she said softly, kind. Then she turned her face to the dark mountains in the distance, her smile fading, her eyes narrowed, filled with fear again. "They come," she whispered. John's heart pounded. "Who?" he asked, but she did not answer. Only the silence of the night replied. And in the distance, he thought he heard something, a faint sound, like footsteps, too many footsteps. the ruins no longer felt empty. The air was heavier, and the poor alien girl he thought was harmless, held the silver wrapper tightly in her hand like a weapon. John looked at her and realized something terrifying. He had no idea who she really was, and giving her that chocolate bar might have changed everything. The night was no longer silent, it was only the beginning. John did not sleep that night. He sat close to the ruins, his back against a broken wall, watching the alien girl. She sat not far from him, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She held the empty wrapper of the chocolate bar like it was the most valuable thing in the universe. Every time John closed his eyes, he heard the sound again, the sound of footsteps in the distance. But when he looked, there was nothing, only shadows moving across the ruins. The girl did not speak much. She kept looking toward the mountains, her face tense, as if she expected something terrible to come from there. John wanted to ask questions, but he knew she barely understood human words. So instead, he just watched her. Her small body looked weak, but there was something hidden in her, something that made the ruins feel less empty. When the two moons set and the faint sun of the alien world began to rise, John stood and prepared to walk. He had no plan, but he could not stay in one place forever. The girl stood too, silent but determined. John frowned. "You're following me?" She tilted her head, then nodded once. It was not a request. It was a decision. John sighed. "Fine, but don't slow me down." As they walked, the ground beneath them seemed to whisper. Broken machines of a forgotten race poked out of the soil, silent and dead. The girl touched them as they passed, and for a second, strange lights flickered inside the ruins. John stopped and stared. "Did you do that?" The girl only looked at him with innocent eyes, then walked on. But John could feel it. She was not ordinary. Something in her blood connected with the old city. Hours passed and the heat grew stronger. John's throat was dry, and his stomach twisted with hunger. He had nothing left, not even the taste of earth to comfort him. But when he looked at the girl, she seemed calm. No food, no water, and yet she walked with steady steps. Sometimes she looked at him, almost studying him. It was as if she wanted to understand why he had helped her, why a human would give away the last of his food to a stranger. By the time the second night came, John was too weak to continue. He dropped to the ground near a broken tower, his breath heavy. The girl sat beside him, quiet. Then, without a word, she touched his hand. Her skin was cool, almost electric, and for a moment, John felt his strength return. Only a little, but enough to breathe easier. He looked at her in shock. "What are you?" he whispered. The girl said nothing, but her eyes glowed again, full of secrets. That night, John dreamed strange dreams. He saw stars falling, great ships burning, and a throne made of crystal. And on that throne, the same girl, but older, taller, more powerful. When he woke, sweat covered his face. The girl was still there, watching him, as if she had been waiting. He tried to laugh. "You're not going to leave me, are you?" She shook her head slowly. "No," she said in her broken voice, "not leave." The bond between them was silent, but it was real. She began to understand his gestures, his looks, his tone. And John began to feel that maybe he was not alone anymore. But with that bond came fear, because the more he trusted her, the more he saw the shadows at night. He heard whispers that were not the wind. He saw glowing marks on the stones when she touched them. She was tied to this world, to its ruins, and maybe to its dangers. One evening, as the sky turned dark red, they found a broken bridge over a dry river. John tried to cross, but the stones crumbled under his feet. He almost fell. But the girl caught his arm with surprising strength. For someone so small, her grip was powerful. She pulled him back with ease. John's heart raced. She looked at him and said softly, "Safe." It was the first word she spoke without mistake. John realized she was learning fast, and that scared him more than the empty ruins. Later, as they rested, John asked, "Why are you here? Why alone?" The girl looked away, her face dark. Finally she whispered, "Hunted." The word froze John's blood. He remembered her warning. "They come." His eyes scanned the horizon, the shadows and the ruins, the silent mountains. If she was hunted, then he was in danger too. And yet, when he looked at her, holding the silver wrapper in her hand like a treasure, he knew he could not abandon her. Not after what they had shared. The night fell once more, and with it came the sound again, not whispers this time, but clearer voices, heavy steps, the metallic sound of armor. John stood quickly, his pistol in hand, his heart racing. The girl stood too, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. She looked at him, her face calm but serious. "They find us," she said. Her voice steady now. John's throat went dry. The bond between them was no longer just strange, it was dangerous. He had given her his last chocolate bar, and in return, he had gained a companion, but maybe also an enemy of something far greater. The ruins shook with the sound of hunters closing in, and John knew their journey together was only beginning. The ruins were no longer silent. The night carried the sound of heavy steps, metal scraping against stone, and strange voices that echoed like thunder. John held his small pistol tightly, his heart racing. He was no soldier, no hero, just a man, lost on a strange planet. But the sound told him one thing: whoever was coming was dangerous. The alien girl stood beside him, her glowing eyes fixed on the darkness. Her face showed no fear, only tension, as if she had been waiting for this moment. John whispered, "Who are they?" She looked at him and said one word, clear and sharp: "Hunters." That word was enough. John knew he could not fight a group of alien hunters with a single pistol and no food. He had only one choice: run. "Come on," he said, grabbing her hand. For a second, she hesitated, her eyes glowing brighter. Then she nodded and ran with him into the shadows of the ruins. The hunters were close. Their strange voices filled the air. John did not understand their language, but he understood their intent. They were searching, tracking, moving with purpose. The sound of their boots was like a drumbeat in the night. John and the girl ran through the broken streets, past fallen towers and shattered machines. The ruins became a maze, every corner another dead end. John's breath came hard, his legs heavy, but he pushed forward. The girl, though small, moved quickly, guiding him, pulling him toward hidden paths. It was as if she knew the city better than anyone, as if the ruins whispered directions to her. Behind them, the hunters grew closer. Strange beams of light cut through the dark, searching. One passed just above John's head, and he dropped to the ground, pulling the girl with him. The beam scorched the wall behind them, leaving a smoking mark. John's heart pounded. They were not just hunters, they were killers. The girl touched his arm, her eyes glowing like silver. "Fire. Move," she whispered. Together, they crawled through a narrow tunnel in the wall. The space was tight, the air thick with dust, but it hid them, at least for a moment. John could hear the hunters outside, their boots shaking the ground, their strange weapons humming. He held his breath, praying they would pass, but one of them stopped. The sound of claws scraping stone filled the air. John gripped his pistol, ready to fire, though he knew it would be useless. The girl looked at him, calm, and put a finger to her lips. Then the sound moved away. Heavy boots fading into the distance. John exhaled slowly, his body trembling. They crawled out the other side of the tunnel and found themselves in a wide courtyard. The moonlight revealed statues of alien kings long forgotten, broken, and half-buried. The girl stopped in the center, staring up at one of the statues. Her face was strange, sad, almost familiar with what she saw. John wanted to ask, but there was no time. The hunters were still searching, still coming. Which way? He asked quickly. The girl pointed toward a collapsed bridge that led deeper into the ruins. Without thinking, John followed her. The stones shook under their feet, dust rising, but the bridge held, and they crossed into another part of the ancient city. For a short while, it seemed they had escaped. The night grew quiet again, the sound of hunters fading. John dropped to his knees, gasping for air. The girl stood over him, calm and silent, her silver wrapper still clenched in her hand. "You knew this would happen," he said between breaths. She looked at him with unreadable eyes and nodded once. "Yes," she whispered. "Always come." John stared at her. She had expected this. She had known they would be chased, hunted, attacked, and yet she had stayed with him. Why? Before he could ask, a sharp sound filled the air. The hunters were back, closer than ever. This time, there was no time to hide. Beams of light shot across the ruins, hitting the ground near them. Stones exploded into dust. Fire burned across the broken walls. "Run!" John shouted, pulling the girl. The chase began again, faster, more dangerous. The hunters moved like shadows, jumping from wall to wall, their weapons glowing. John fired his pistol once. The shot useless, but enough to slow them for a second. The girl moved ahead, her speed unnatural. She turned suddenly, grabbing his hand and pulling him through a hidden doorway. Inside was a stairway leading down into the dark. They ran without stopping, the sound of hunters echoing above. The stairway ended in a great hall underground. The walls glowed faintly with ancient symbols. Machines stood silent, their purpose unknown. The girl placed her hand on one of the walls, and the symbols lit up. John froze. The ruins responded to her touch, alive for the first time in centuries. The ground shook, light spread across the hall, and a low hum filled the air. "What did you do?" John whispered, his voice shaking. The girl turned to him, her glowing eyes filled with power. "Safe," she said softly. For now, above them, the hunters roared, their voices filled with anger. The sound echoed through the ruins, promising they would not stop. But for the first time, John realized something important. The girl was not just running from the hunters. She was hiding something powerful, something the hunters feared. And now, by giving her his last chocolate bar, John was part of it. Whether he wanted to be or not, the chase was not over. It had only just begun. The underground hall glowed with strange light. Symbols carved into the stone walls burned faintly like fireflies trapped in crystal. John stood frozen, his breath caught in his chest. The alien girl stood in the center, her small hand pressed against the wall. The light spread out from her touch, filling the chamber with energy that felt alive. It was like the ruins had been waiting for her return. John whispered, What are you doing?" The girl did not answer at first. Her silver eyes were bright, almost blinding. When she finally spoke, her voice was stronger than before. "Home," she said softly. "This, my place." John's heart pounded. He stepped closer, staring at the glowing walls, the silent machines hidden in the shadows. "Your place?" he repeated, his voice shaking. "What do you mean?" The girl lowered her hand, and the light faded a little. Her shoulders trembled, and for the first time, she looked both young and old at the same time. She turned to him and said words that made his blood turn cold. "Not poor. Not lost, I am." She hesitated, searching for the right word. Then she whispered, "Princess." The word echoed in John's mind like thunder. Princess, not weak, not helpless, but something greater. He stared at her, unable to speak. She walked closer, holding the silver wrapper of the chocolate bar tightly in her hand. She spoke slowly, her broken human words mixing with her alien tongue. "My people betray me, send hunters, take throne." John felt his knees weaken. This small, fragile girl was no ordinary survivor. She was the daughter of a ruler, the heir to a kingdom, or whatever these ruins had once been. And the hunters, they were not after her because she was weak. They were after her because she was powerful, because she was a threat. The girl's voice grew stronger. "They fear me," she said. "Fear what I will become." Her eyes glowed brighter as she spoke, the ruins pulsing with her words. John's skin prickled as the ground shook gently under his feet. It was not just a story, her power was real. John took a step back, fear creeping into his chest. He remembered the moment she ate the chocolate bar, the way her eyes had glowed brighter, the way the ruins had awakened when she touched them. The way she pulled him from the bridge with unnatural strength. "What are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. The girl looked at him, and for a moment, her face softened. "Hungry," she said, almost smiling. "Alone. Until you." Her words cut through the fear. John remembered that moment, the simple choice to share his last piece of food. He had given her chocolate. Something small, something human, and in return, she had given him trust. But now he wondered if he had given her something far more dangerous. The sound of the hunters returned, echoing through the ruins above. The walls shook, dust falling from the ceiling. The girl's eyes turned sharp again. "They come," she whispered. "Want me dead?" She looked at John, her face serious. "You saved me once," she said. "Now must choose again." John gripped his pistol. Though he knew it was useless against armored hunters, his heart pounded. He had no reason to trust her, no reason to risk his life again. But when he looked at her, he saw the trembling girl sitting in the ruins, starving alone, and he saw the power glowing in her eyes. She was both weak and strong, victim and danger, and somehow he was caught in the middle. Before he could answer, the ground above cracked open. The hunters dropped into the chamber, their armor black and shining, their weapons glowing with deadly light. Their leader raised a blade, pointing it at the girl. The alien words he shouted were filled with hatred. The girl stepped forward, her small body trembling, but her voice steady. "No," she said. "Not this time." Then it happened. Her body glowed like fire, silver light pouring from her skin. The ruins answered her call, the walls shining, the machines humming. The hunters froze for a second, shocked, and then the girl raised her hand and a wave of energy exploded outward. The nearest hunters were thrown across the chamber, their armor breaking like glass. John shielded his eyes, the light burning. When it was over, silence filled the hall again. The girl stood tall, her eyes blazing, her breath heavy. The hunters lay broken on the ground, their weapons useless. John stared at her in horror and awe. The weak, starving alien girl was gone. In her place stood something powerful, dangerous, unstoppable. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "Afraid?" John's mouth went dry. He wanted to say yes, but instead, he whispered, "I don't know." The girl stepped closer, her glow fading slowly. She looked almost human again, small and fragile. But John knew the truth now. She was no poor girl. Lost in the ruins, she was a princess, betrayed and hunted. And the chocolate bar he had shared with her was not just food. It had awakened something inside her, something the hunters feared, something even she did not fully control. John's heart sank. He had saved her once, but now he wondered, had he saved a friend, or had he unleashed a storm that would destroy them both? The ruins whispered with power. The hunters would return, stronger. And John realized there was no turning back. He was bound to her secret, to her war. The secret was revealed, and nothing would ever be the same. The chamber was silent after the blast. The ruins still glowed faintly, dust falling like snow from the ceiling. The hunters lay broken across the floor, their black armor cracked, their strange weapons scattered. John stared at them, then at the girl. She stood in the center, her silver eyes still burning faintly, her small hands trembling with leftover power. John swallowed hard. He had just watched her destroy enemies with a wave of energy. Power like that did not belong to a poor, weak child. It belonged to something greater, something dangerous. He remembered her words. Princess, she was not just a survivor, she was a ruler in exile, hunted by her own people. The girl turned to him slowly. Her eyes softened for a moment, like the trembling child he had first met. "You safe," she whispered, her voice shaky. "I protect." But John felt a shadow in her words, a weight behind her glowing eyes. Was she protecting him or using him? Before he could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed again. The hunters were not finished. More of them entered from the broken ceiling, their weapons raised, their eyes glowing behind their helmets. the leader shouted in his alien tongue, his voice shaking the chamber. This time, they were ready for her. John raised his pistol out of instinct, firing at the nearest one. The shot sparked harmlessly off their armor. He knew it was useless, but his body moved anyway. The girl stepped forward, her eyes blazing brighter. The hunters fired beams of light, the air burning as they struck. The girl raised her hand and a shield of glowing silver light appeared in front of her. The beams hit it and dissolved like smoke. Then she unleashed her power again. A storm of light burst from her, throwing the hunters back. The ground shook, the ruins cried out, and the machines around them began to hum as if waking from a deep sleep. John dropped to his knees, covering his face from the blinding light. When it ended, the hall was silent again. The hunters lay destroyed, their armor smoking. The girl stood tall, glowing faintly, her breath slow and steady. But this time, something was different. Her eyes lingered on the broken bodies too long. Her lips curled into a faint smile, almost proud. John felt a chill run through him. That was not the smile of a child saved. It was the smile of a queen remembering her throne. She turned to him, her silver wrapper still clenched in her hand. "You see now," she said softly, her words clearer, stronger. "I am not weak, not hunted only. I am power." John shook his head slowly. "This isn't just about surviving, is it?" he asked, his voice tight. She tilted her head, studying him. "You gave gift," she whispered. "You give me strength. Chocolate, kindness, trust, all this." Her glowing eyes locked on him. "You wake me." John's throat went dry. What had he done? He had given away his last food, his last hope, and now he had unleashed something unstoppable. The girl stepped closer, and for the first time, John felt small in her presence. Not because of her size, but because of the storm of power inside her. He whispered, "What do you want from me?" The girl's expression changed, her voice low and sharp. "Loyalty," she said. "You stand with me, or you fall with them." Her hand pointed to the broken hunters on the ground. The words cut deep. It was no longer a choice to protect her. It was a demand. John felt his chest tighten. He remembered the starving girl sitting in the ruins, the way she had looked at the chocolate bar with tears in her eyes. That girl was gone, replaced by something fierce, something dangerous. He whispered, "I saved you because I wanted to help, not because I wanted to serve." The girl's eyes narrowed, glowing brighter. "You cannot leave," she said. "You are mine now." The words hit him harder than any weapon. He had saved her, protected her, believed in her, and now she spoke like a queen claiming her subject, like a master claiming her servant. John raised his pistol slowly, his hands shaking. For a moment, silence filled the hall, heavy and cold. The girl looked at him, her face unreadable. Would she kill him if he refused? But before anything could happen, the ruins trembled again. A loud roar echoed from above. Deeper than the hunters, the ceiling cracked, dust raining down. The girl looked up sharply, her face turning pale. "They come," she whispered. But this time, there was fear in her voice. Not hunters, something worse. John wanted to speak, but his words caught in his throat. She grabbed his hand suddenly, her grip strong, almost crushing. "We run," she said, her voice sharp, and before he could resist, she pulled him into the shadows of another tunnel. Her power lit the way as the ruins shook behind them. As they ran, John looked at her face, glowing in the dark. He saw fear, but also something else: ambition, hunger, a fire that could not be put out. And he knew in his heart the truth. The poor alien girl was gone. What remained was a princess, betrayed, hunted, and powerful beyond reason. And she had already chosen her path. John had shared his last chocolate bar. He had saved her life, but now he wondered if he had also doomed himself, because in her eyes, he was no longer a savior. He was a piece of her destiny, and if he tried to walk away, she might not let him live. The betrayal had begun, and John's heart whispered a question he was too afraid to say aloud. Had he saved a friend or awakened a monster. The tunnel shook as John and the girl ran through the dark. The ground cracked, and the walls glowed faintly with alien light. Something massive moved above them, shaking the ruins like thunder. It was not the hunters anymore. This was different. Heavier, older, more dangerous. John's breath came fast. His chest tight, his legs wanted to stop, but the girl's grip pulled him forward. Her glowing eyes cut through the shadows like fire, guiding him deeper underground. Finally, they reached another chamber. Smaller, quieter, the sounds above faded for a moment, only the echoes of dripping water filling the air. The girl released his hand, standing in the center of the room. Her shoulders rose and fell as if she carried a weight too heavy. Her silver wrapper still clutched in her fingers, glowing faintly in the dim light. John leaned against the wall, his pistol heavy in his hand. He looked at her and whispered, "You're hiding more, aren't you?" The girl turned slowly, her face unreadable. "I told truth," she said softly. "But not all." Her eyes lowered, almost ashamed, then lifted again, sharp and clear. "My power. Not complete, not stable. I need control," she raised the silver wrapper, her voice trembling for the first time. "You gave me chocolate. Human food. It woke me, gave me strength." John frowned, trying to understand. "You mean Earth food makes you stronger?" She nodded once. "Not food. Only your kindness too. It changes me." Her voice grew stronger. "I could destroy hunters. I could take throne back. I could rule again." She paused, looking at him carefully. "But if I lose control, I will destroy everything." Her words hung heavy in the chamber. John's chest tightened. This was not just about her survival anymore. It was about the fate of the planet, maybe more. She had the power of a weapon, but the mind of a child still learning, and if she lost control, he might be the first to die. The girl stepped closer, her silver eyes glowing brighter. "You helped me once. You saved me," she whispered. "Now I ask again. Will you stay with me? Will you stand beside me?" Her voice was calm, but her hand shook as she reached toward him. It was not just a request. It was a demand wrapped in fear. John's heart pounded. He saw her as two people, the starving girl who had cried over a chocolate bar, and the powerful princess who destroyed armies with a wave of her hand. Which one was real? Which one was he saving? And if he chose wrong, what would it cost him? He looked at his pistol, then back at her hand. He whispered, "Why me?" The girl's lips curved into a sad smile. "Because you gave when you had nothing," she said. "No one else ever gave me that, not even my people." Her words struck him deep. He remembered that moment opening his bag, choosing kindness over survival. It had felt small, but now it carried the weight of two worlds. If he walked away, she might lose control. If he stayed, he might lose himself. The ground shook again, louder this time. The roar above returned, shaking dust from the ceiling. The girl's eyes widened, fear flashing across her face. "They come," she whispered. "Bigger than hunters, stronger. They bring destroyers." She turned back to John, her hand still reaching for him. "You must choose now," she said, her voice sharp, almost desperate. "Stand with me or die with them." John's chest tightened like iron. He thought of Earth, of home, of the people he would never see again. And he thought of her, this strange alien girl who had somehow become the center of his story. The choice was not simple. It was impossible. For a moment, he closed his eyes. He imagined himself walking away, leaving her to her fate. Maybe he could hide. Maybe he could survive. But in his heart, he knew it was a lie. If she fell, if she lost control, the planet would burn. Maybe the stars too. There was no safety without her. He opened his eyes again, meeting her glowing gaze. "I don't trust you," he said, his voice low. "But I can't let you face this alone." Her expression softened, her eyes shimmering with something like relief. She stepped closer, her hand touching his shoulder gently. "You choose well, human," she whispered. "You choose hope. But John was not sure if it was hope. It felt more like standing on the edge of a cliff, with the ground crumbling beneath his feet. Still, he had made his choice. He would stand with her, no matter the cost. The chamber shook again, louder than ever. A massive crack split the ceiling, light pouring in from above. John raised his pistol, his hand steady now. The girl raised her glowing hands, power humming through the ruins. Together, they faced the darkness above. Whatever came next, it would decide everything. And John knew in his heart, his choice had bound him to her forever. There was no turning back. The ceiling split wide above them. Light and dust poured into the chamber, followed by the sound of engines so deep the stones shook like drums. John raised his pistol, though he knew it was nothing against the storm that was coming. The alien girl stood beside him, her silver eyes burning brighter than ever, her hands trembling with energy she could barely hold. Through the crack above, shapes appeared, massive war machines. Hunters clad in heavier armor, their weapons glowing like suns. Behind them came a ship, black and sharp, filling the sky like a predator. It was not just a hunting party anymore, it was an army. They had come to finish what they started. John's chest tightened, but he stood firm. He whispered to himself, "Not today." The girl turned to him, her voice sharp. "They want me," she said. "They take me, they kill me, they take throne forever." Her eyes flickered with fear and fury. "Alone I cannot win, I lose control." John swallowed, his throat dry. "And with me?" he asked, her voice softened, almost breaking. "With you. Maybe I remember who I am." The roar above grew louder, the ship lowering. Beams of light scanning the ruins. The ground cracked as armored hunters dropped into the chamber, weapons raised. John stepped in front of her, his pistol aimed, though it looked like a toy compared to their machines. The girl touched his shoulder, her small hand steady. "You stand, even with nothing," she whispered. "That is why they fear you." Human. The hunters charged, beams of energy tearing through the air. John fired back, his shots weak but precise. Enough to distract, enough to make them stumble. The girl raised her hands, and silver light exploded across the chamber. The ruins awakened fully, machines in the walls coming alive, humming with ancient power. The hunters screamed as their weapons failed, their armor cracked. The ground itself seemed to fight against them, but the strain was clear. The girl's body shook, her eyes glowing too bright, her power spilling uncontrolled. John saw it, the edge of collapse. "The storm that could consume everything," he shouted. "Hold on, don't let it take you." She looked at him, her face twisted with pain. I cannot." Without thinking, John dropped his pistol and grabbed her hands. Her skin burned like fire, but he held tight. "Listen," he shouted. "You're not alone. Remember the chocolate, remember that moment. You are more than power, you are alive. You are not a weapon." Her eyes widened, silver light spilling like rivers. For a moment, the storm slowed. Her breath catching, she whispered, "Why you help me? You could run, you could leave." John's voice shook, but he did not let go. "Because that's what humans do," he said. "We stand together, we share what little we have, even when it's all we've got, because that's our strength." The chamber shook, the storm of power roaring. The hunters tried to advance, but the girl's light grew steadier, brighter. Her hands no longer trembled, his words had anchored her. Her eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, there was no fear, only resolve. Then she turned back to the hunters, her voice a command. "No more," she said. Silver fire exploded outward, a wave of energy that tore through the chamber like a storm. The hunters screamed as their armor shattered. Their weapons turned to ash. The great black ship above cracked under the force, flames pouring from its engines. The ruins glowed like stars. Alive again with her power, John shielded his face, his body shaking from the blast. When it ended, silence fell. The hunters were gone, the ship above burning as it fell into the distant mountains. The girl stood tall in the center, her glow fading slowly, her small body trembling with exhaustion. John looked at her, his chest heavy. She was no longer just a girl, no longer just a princess. She was something more: hope, danger, destiny, and he had been the one to awaken it. She turned to him, her voice soft. "You give last food, last kindness, and you give me control." Her silver eyes shimmered like tears. "I will never forget." John, he wanted to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he simply nodded, because deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. Above them, the sky burned with falling ships. But beyond the smoke, stars still shone bright, and somewhere out there, more enemies waited. More battles would come. John had no ship, no supplies, no plan. But he had something else: the trust of a princess, the bond of two worlds, and the stubborn strength of humanity. The girl stepped closer, placing the crumpled silver wrapper in his hand. "Keep," she whispered. Remind me." John stared at it. The small piece of earth that had started it all. He smiled faintly, tired but alive. "Yeah," he said softly, "I'll keep it." In the distance, thunder rolled as the wreck of the great ship burned. The war was far from over, but for the first time, John felt ready, because sometimes the smallest choice, a shared chocolate bar, a single act of kindness, could change the fate of stars. The girl looked at him one last time, her voice calm but filled with promise. "They will come again, stronger," she said, "but we will stand together." And John believed her, because this was humanity's gift. Not weapons, not strength, not ships, but the courage to choose hope. Even at the edge of the dark, the night was silent again, but the stars above seemed to whisper the story of a human and an alien girl who had shared more than food. They had shared destiny.